Rushing Radio Program at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. And our first speaker will be Congresswoman Ayota, who is on her way, but I thought I might simply discuss the order of the morning with you before she arrives. We have a very good panel this morning, basically to talk about the relationship between the United States and Kazakhstan. And I will introduce them as they begin their remarks. But let me just say a word or two about my own relations with Kazakhstan. I was the chargé of the embassy in Moscow when the Soviet Union ended. And I think one of the things I was most proud of about our country was that we were the first nation to recognize all of those former Soviet republics as independent members of the international community. And we were, in fact, the first nation to introduce, to recognize the new Republic of Kazakhstan. Moreover, there's a man here in the audience, Jackson McDonald, who was the man we sent to open our first mission in Kazakhstan. And so he is the first ever envoy of a foreign nation to arrive at that time in Almaty as the new capital. And ever since then, in over 2 decades, the United States and Kazakhstan have been engaged in a sort of large experiment about how a country like the United States, a 200-plus-year-old democracy, can work with a state that emerged from an empire at the end of the 20th century and work to establish itself as a viable and independent and vigorous member of the international community. And I don't think there's any country about which we can be prouder than Kazakhstan in that regard. And so I want to wish Kazakhstan well and thank all of you for being here to talk about that relationship this morning. Now, it is my pleasure this morning to introduce our first speaker, Senator Kelly Ayotte, who is from New Hampshire. She currently serves on the Armed Services, Budget, Commerce and Homeland Security and Government Affairs and Aging Committees, which is a fairly broad portfolio. She is a ranking member and is a top Republican on the Armed Services Subcommittee on Readiness and the Commerce Subcommittee on Aviation Operations. She was as a longtime prosecutor, she served and was named in 2004 as New Hampshire's first female Attorney General. And she was first appointed to that position by a Republican governor, but I think it says a great deal about her and what she does for the Senate that she was twice reappointed by a Democratic governor. So, Senator Ayotte, it's my pleasure to give you the podium.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Collins. I'm deeply honored to be here today. I first of all want to thank the Embassy of Kazakhstan and Ambassador Amorov. It's an honor to be here with you today, and certainly the Council of Turkic-American Associations and the Turkic-American Alliance for hosting this event today. I want to give a special recognition to Representative Lynette Peterson from the state of New Hampshire and her strong support in our state, and as a great leader, so I appreciate being with her today. And I also want to thank all of you for what you do to build even closer ties between Americans and the people of Kazakhstan, because this is a very important relationship. I want to recognize certainly Mr. Furkan Kosar, the president of the Council of Turkic-American Associations, and thank him for his leadership, and Kemal Aksus, the president of Turquoise Council of Americans and Eurasians. And it's an honor to be among so many distinguished leaders today. The Republic of Kazakhstan, we're very proud of the relationship that the United States has with Kazakhstan. As you all know, in 1991, the United States became the very first country to recognize Kazakhstan as an independent nation, one that has had independence of 22 years since the fall of the Soviet Union. And since that time, our countries have developed a strong partnership. I'm proud of the fact that our countries have cooperated to advance many shared interests that we continue to have. Starting first with economic growth, in 1994, the United States signed a bilateral investment treaty with Kazakhstan, an important first step to facilitate increased investment between our two countries. And certainly we would like to continue to see even greater cooperation in trade and investment between our countries. In terms of regional security, Kazakhstan has played key roles in advancing regional stability as a member of the United Nations, as a leader within the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, as well as an active participant in NATO's Partnership for Peace program. And a very important partnership that we have together is in preventing terrorism, in stopping terrorist activity, and in peacekeeping. It's certainly something that, serving on the Armed Services Committee, I very much appreciate the importance of the relationship between our countries. Our countries share a common interest in building counterterrorism and peacekeeping capacity. Annually, Kazakhstan hosts the Steep Eagle joint counterterrorism and peacekeeping exercises with Kazakh, US, and NATO forces all working together. And another issue that, of course, is near and dear to my heart that I think our countries both play a very important role in throughout the world is the basic human rights for all people, including women's rights. Our two countries have also had a strong common interest in promoting women's rights. I applaud Kazakhstan for playing a leading role in promoting greater regional economic integration for women, with a particular emphasis on economically empowering women. Led by Kazakhstani businesswomen and parliamentarians, a regional women business association for Central Asia and Afghan women entrepreneurs was recently launched in Astana in December of 2012. And I believe that Kazakhstan also can help pave the way with what is happening for the economic freedom and the basic human rights of women in Afghanistan, which is very, very important if Afghanistan is going to succeed in terms of its independence, in terms of its ability to thrive as a democracy. The United States and Kazakhstan, as you know, have a shared interest in not allowing Afghanistan to once again become a safe haven or a launching pad for terrorism and terrorist activities. So now more than ever, as the United States is working with Afghan leadership on the bilateral security agreement and implementing that agreement, the relationship between our countries is very, very important in ensuring that there is a stable Afghanistan moving forward, which not only benefits the United States of America, but also very much benefits Kazakhstan and the region as a whole. I would like to acknowledge Kazakhstan's role as a strategic partner in support of our mission in Afghanistan. You have been very, very important to us. As Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel pointed out in July, a critical component of Kazakhstan's assistance has been in support for the Northern Distribution Network, a very, very important network to our country as well, as we try in appropriate ways to move our equipment to make sure that network remains open. The NDN enables critical supplies to reach U.S. and international troops and the Afghan people, and that's going to be a very important network moving forward as well for Afghanistan. I also applaud Kazakhstan for creating a $50 million scholarship program for educating Afghan students in Kazakhstan's universities. This is very, very important for Afghanistan to succeed, and thank you for giving opportunities to Afghan students who need it very much. Finally, I'd like to touch on a very important issue that is been in the forefront in the news, and that is the issue of Iran's nuclear program. Our two countries have a strong common interest in preventing nuclear proliferation. I want to applaud Kazakhstan for divesting its Soviet-era nuclear warheads and large quantities of highly enriched uranium
as well as maintaining commitments to a number of non-proliferation treaties, including the Non-Proliferation Treaty and the additional protocol. I also appreciate Kazakhstan's willingness to host 2 rounds of the P5+1 negotiations in March and April of this year. This is an issue that is important to not only our 2 countries, but to the world. It is important that we work together to continue to prevent a nuclear-armed Iran in terms of what it'll do to the stability of the region and what it could do in terms of the safety of the world. And I look forward to, as a member of the Armed Services Committee, as a member of our Homeland Security Committee, of working on this important issue and continuing to work with all of you on improving and strengthening the great bond between our 2 countries. So I hope today you have a great conference. I know that together, the United States and Kazakhstan can continue to be strong partners, to pursue our common interests, and to really be able to move forward for regional stability that will help the safety and security of both of our countries in the world. And I know that there are greater opportunities for economic prosperity between our 2 countries. So I look forward to working with my colleagues in the Senate and all of you to further the U.S.-Kazakhstan relationship. So I appreciate the opportunity to be here with all of you today and look forward to working with you going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator. And I think you have given us a good beginning for a meeting that is going to discuss the relationship. To start us from the panel, Ambassador Umarov is going to give us a Kazakhstan perspective. The ambassador is well known, I think, to this audience, doesn't need an introduction, but I want to thank him for being so instrumental in putting together this meeting. So, Ambassador, let me give you the podium.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Collins, for agreeing to moderate this panel. I know moderating is not an easy task, but thank you very much for being with us. Thank you very much for a very distinguished panel which we have today to discuss Kazakhstan-US strategic partnership relations. I hope that we can have a very interesting discussion. Kazakhstan cherishes its friendship and relationship with the United States. And, you know, the strategic partnership is the partnership which is directed to the future. And we would like to work with the United States on the future development of Kazakhstan and the region as a whole, and to work with the United States on many actual issues which we have plenty in today's world. If we start from the beginning, I would like to mention that the U.S. have helped Kazakhstan to strengthen its independence and provided much-needed support during the early years of our nation. This relationship has grown in its scope and depth, and now it covers such global issues as nuclear non-proliferation and regional cooperation in Central Asia and Eurasia. Together, we have contributed to global security and regional stability through the Northern Distribution Network and the New Silk Road, both of which will assist Afghanistan beyond 2014. And you heard the words of Senator who was talking about this relationship. We think it's a very important relationship which is really directed for the future. American economic and diplomatic presence is growing in our region, and Kazakhstan is very much ready to assist our American colleagues in working in that region. We have the knowledge of the developments in the region, and we would like to contribute to the stability of the region. Kazakhstan is a forward-looking country poised to achieve aspirations of its people for a decent life and higher standards of living. Kazakhstan believes in progress and stability. We believe in worldwide peace and peaceful coexistence. And we not only believe in it, but we are actively working for it through different initiatives, through different organizations. Kazakhstan was the chairman of the OSCE, chairman of the Organization of Islamic Conference and Shanghai Cooperation Organization. We have initiated a conference on interaction and confidence-building measures in Asia. We have the Congress of World and Traditional Religious Leaders, in which we hold very regularly in Kazakhstan. We try to advance the agenda of mutual respect and tolerance through all of these platforms, because we very much believe that the future of the region, the future of the world, very much dependent on mutual understanding and the way how we can create a world of peace and tolerance. You know, we have launched quite recently the Strategy 2050, which is a visionary and long-term program for progressive development laid out by President of Kazakhstan, Nursultan Nazarbayev. Its goal to make Kazakhstan one of the most developed nations in the world by 2050. In implementing the strategy, there are important roles for American companies, think tanks, and NGOs. For example, American companies can be part of the success story by improving private sector efficiency and at the same time benefit themselves from the dynamic growth of our economy. Think tanks can help formulate outside-the-box solutions to existing development issues. And NGOs can play a role in implementing projects aimed at protecting the environment and promoting social equality so that no one is left behind as our nation continues to grow. Today we know our priorities. We understand that to achieve them, it will require time and resources, but we are very much committed to make it a reality. It is a great thing that my president, Nazarbayev, is a visionary global statesman with a developmental mindset. He has placed a special focus on modernization, economic diversification, and raising the standards of living for everyone. And today, all of us, we work for it because we understand that this transformations and evolution is good not only for Kazakhstan, but it's good for the neighboring countries, it's good for the region, it's good for the rest of the world. Because of this developmental strategy, Kazakhstan looks forward to building an even more prosperous society in the long run. And coming back to the main theme of this panel, strategic partnership, why it matters, I should say that United States and Kazakhstan, both of our countries has a very strong common interest in stability, progress, and prosperity, not only in Kazakhstan, but in the region as a whole. And it is a very natural converging interest and goals which we can share together and can work together. Kazakhstan is very much interested in stability in its environment. We want Central Asia and Eurasia as a whole to be a platform for cooperation and not for confrontation. We would like that the major powers in the world try to find the common ground and work together to make this area stable, progressive, and prosperous. We are ready to work. We are ready to contribute to that. We are committed to help everyone who has this kind of goals. And we think that together with the United States, we can really get things done in this particular way in the region. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Master. There are a few people in the American diplomatic service who have more experience in Central Asia than Dick Hoagland. He is presently the Deputy Assistant Secretary for South and Central Asian Affairs, and he's been that since October 13. But he has served in Kazakhstan as ambassador. He was in Tajikistan as ambassador. He has also been chargé in Turkmenistan, and he has been the deputy ambassador in Pakistan. And I might add, I also know Dick because he worked with me in Moscow during the early 90s. So Dick is going to give us his thoughts on the strategic partnership. So Dick, the floor is yours.
Let me say first, I still think of Ambassador Collins as my boss. Ambassador Umarov, distinguished guests, thank you for the opportunity to speak briefly about why the U.S.-Kazakhstan relationship matters and how we see that relationship growing in the future. But first, let me thank the Embassy of Kazakhstan and the Turkic-American Alliance for hosting this event, as well as all the other sponsors who have helped provide a forum to discuss this very important topic, this very important relationship. As Ambassador Collins said, I have had the honor and privilege of serving in Kazakhstan as U.S. Ambassador, and now that I'm back in Washington, I have the opportunity to help build an even stronger partnership between our two countries. The United States was the first to recognize Kazakhstan's independent and sovereign nationhood in 1991. And from that time onward, we have seen Kazakhstan as an increasingly significant partner in many areas, not the least of which is in matters of economics and global security. Looking back over the past 2 decades, it's easy to see that Kazakhstan has consistently overcome the challenges that it's faced. But at the moment of independence, Kazakhstan's future success was not at all predestined. It was a landlocked state that had not been seeking the independence that history unexpectedly thrust upon it. In the immediate wake of independence, however, Kazakhstan's national leadership made 3 fundamental decisions that have paid off increasingly handsomely ever since. First, to pursue fundamental economic reforms. Second, to give up the 4th largest nuclear arsenal in the world. And third, to give highest priority to educating a new generation to ensure that Kazakhstan would eventually take its rightful place on the world stage. Let's start with the economic reform very briefly. Kazakhstan's very early and comprehensive economic reforms have made it an increasingly important economic partner for the United States. American firms such as General Electric and Chevron have been trustworthy partners with Kazakhstani firms. General Electric GE Transportation is working on an important joint venture to enlarge a diesel locomotive manufacturing plant and now establish a diesel engine plant in Astana that will increasingly serve rail, marine, and stationary power customers throughout the region. Kazakhstan's smart investments in railways and roads can be a game changer in world trade and will serve as part of the infrastructure backbone for the new Silk Road. When a commercial shipment can move from a Chinese factory to the Ruhr Valley in Germany in only 15 days by rail via Kazakhstan, instead of the 45 days it takes to send a shipment by sea, that overturns many assumptions about trade flows. It also puts a premium on developing the sort of joint transportation and logistical projects that foreign investors will be interested in and that can take advantage of these trade volumes. The U.S. government plans to send a high-powered trade delegation to Kazakhstan in the coming year. Kazakhstan's openness to economic partnership with the United States has helped that country achieve the highest per capita foreign investment among the members of the Commonwealth of Independent States. U.S. interest in the Kazakh economy will only increase as Kazakhstan finalizes its WTO accession. As Kazakhstan continues to develop a sound regime of intellectual property rights, introduces WTO and OECD standards, and ensures the even application of laws and regulations, investment in a broad range of sectors outside of energy will grow. Security and nonproliferation, the second pillar. Following the breakup of the Soviet Union, U.S. policymakers worried about the fate of nuclear weapons and weapons-grade material in the newly independent states of the former Soviet Union. Due to the Soviet history of nuclear testing on their soil, Kazakhstanis understood all too well the scourge of nuclear weapons. Concerned citizens, with a young man named Khairat Umarov among them, organized the Nevada Semipalatinsk movement in the last years of the Soviet Union, and drawing on popular sentiments, urged both Soviet and American leaders to work toward a nuclear-free world. Their movement set the tone for independent Kazakhstan's leadership in nonproliferation. Shortly after independence, Kazakhstan did give up its nuclear arsenal, the fourth largest in the world at that time, and asserted its firm commitment to the nonproliferation of weapons of mass destruction, whether they be nuclear or biological. Here, too, the U.S.-Kazakhstan partnership has proven its worth. For instance, in 2010, during the time that I was ambassador in Kazakhstan, our two countries, with the assistance of the Russian Federation, Ukraine, and the United Kingdom, transported highly enriched uranium and plutonium from the closed BN-350 nuclear reactor in Aktau to a secure long-term storage facility. This move ensured that the fissile material in question, sufficient to make hundreds of nuclear weapons, could never fall into the wrong hands. I was present at the new storage facility for the opening ceremony, and I will never forget the deep emotion of that moment. The world had become a safer place. In working together on nonproliferation over 2 decades, our two nations have developed a strong mutual trust that serves as the foundation for many other cooperative efforts in international security. To cite a recent example, Kazakhstan's hosting of the P5+1 talks on Iran earlier this year was key in the international community's efforts to reach a tentative diplomatic solution to the issue of Tehran's nuclear program. Finally, a few words on education. To be a successful new country requires a new generation of leaders who think in new ways. This simple but fundamental insight led Kazakhstan to establish the Bolshak program that has now educated abroad, in the United States, in Europe, and in Asia, hundreds and hundreds of Kazakhstani students who have already risen to leadership positions in both the public and private sectors. We share Kazakhstan's commitment to develop its human capital. We're pleased to have hosted hundreds of Kazakhstani students at our colleges and universities who have since returned to Kazakhstan to serve their country. Similarly, through their partnership with Nazarbayev University in Astana, American universities such as the University of Pennsylvania, Duke University, and the University of Wisconsin have worked with Kazakhstani educational leaders to broaden the availability of high-level instruction in Kazakhstan. The focus is on critical thinking with the goal of a knowledge-based economy by 2050. Of course, it's one thing to educate, but it's another to ensure that an education is put to good use. Through its ongoing civil service reform, Kazakhstan is reducing the influence of patronage in its government appointee system, creating a merit-based senior executive service whose members have passed a rigorous examination process. The Civil Service Agency of Kazakhstan has signed a memorandum of understanding with our own Office of Personnel Management, and a class of new senior civil servants from Kazakhstan will be spending a semester in the United States, partly at Duke University and partly at OPM's Federal Executive Institute in Charlottesville, Virginia. Through this and other ventures, the United States remains committed to working with Kazakhstan to foster democracy and good governance. There's so much more I could mention, including Kazakhstan's commitment to Afghanistan to ensure peace, stability, and prosperity in the region. But let me conclude simply by saying that I hope I've begun to make clear why this growing partnership matters and why it will certainly continue to grow and continue to matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Hoagland. Certainly, the security dimension of the American relationship with Kazakhstan has been one of our critical and most important sources of the development of the relationship. I think David Sedney is probably as well equipped to talk about that as anyone I know. He was until earlier this year the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Central Asia in the Office of the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Asia and Pacific Security Affairs. And he has long experience in Asian affairs. He served as the Deputy Chief of Mission in Beijing. So, David, let me give you the floor.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Ambassador Umarov, and I want to also thank the sponsors of this event. I'm talking on the subject of Kazakhstan and its role in essentially a peaceful, secure, and stable Central Asia. And the key word I'm going to pull out is central from the agenda item. And I want to start off by saying how much I admire and appreciate the immense success Kazakhstan has had in those areas over the last 20 plus years. And note that it was never predetermined that Kazakhstan would be that successful. The challenges that Kazakhstan has faced and overcome, I think, are often poorly understood, because when people see success, they tend to assume that it was inevitable. And as I said, Kazakhstan's success was not inevitable. However, I'm going to focus also on the challenges ahead, because the prior speakers have done, I think, a great job of describing where Kazakhstan has come from and where it is today. But I would say that looking ahead, and going back to Ambassador Umarov's statement, which I think is very true of the people of Kazakhstan as well as the rest of Central Asia, that people want stability. But when people say stability, that doesn't mean they want the status quo to continue. They don't want to maintain the same level of economic development. They don't want the same level of security they have today. They want better security. They want more economic development. They want closer ties. The status quo of the past 20 plus years for Kazakhstan has been increasing interconnection with the rest of the world, an increasing role for Kazakhstan. I think the question for Kazakhstan now is, how central will Kazakhstan be in a world that's continuing to change? Kazakhstan and all of Central Asia are located what I like to call an area of friction between tectonic plates of geopolitics: Russia, China, Turkey, Iran, India, Pakistan, and of course the United States, which, while it's not one of the geographical tectonic plates, plays a key role in Central Asia as well. Afghanistan, and I was very impressed by the way that Senator Ayotte laid out, and I want to second her compliments of the role that Kazakhstan has played regarding Afghanistan. But Afghanistan is at a time of choice. Afghanistan is currently debating a bilateral security agreement with the United States, and while the people of Afghanistan, through their assembly, their Loya Jirga, have said they want it. There's still some question about how it's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and even in some cases, if it's going to happen. That's a major choice that the people of Afghanistan face. And it's going to have a huge impact not just on Afghanistan, but on Central Asia. Similarly, there are many choices ahead for the peoples and governments of Central Asia, and particularly Kazakhstan. The choices, as I said before, that Kazakhstan has made until now have been very positive and have led to a great amount of success. But I think the choices that lay ahead are going to be even harder and are going to take place in an even more challenging environment. As we speak here today, another country that is facing similar challenges, Ukraine, is going through some very, very challenging times. Ukraine is also on on one of those tectonic plates, the border between what you might call Russian influence and European influence. And that the choice that the Ukraine and the Ukrainian people are going to make is probably still in the balance. And why do I mention this when I'm talking about the centrality of Kazakhstan? Because, of course, Kazakhstan is part of the customs union that many people in the streets in Kiev are think that they're fighting against the Eurasian Union. That's one of the futures that they have. Kazakhstan is part of those. I will leave an open question. Are the people in Kiev demonstrating against Kazakhstan? No, they're not. Does Kazakhstan play a role in what's happening in Ukraine? Yes, it does. What is that role? That's a very, very hard question, and one that I'm not qualified to answer. I can only make a few comments. But I'm going to step back from that immediate issue of the of the question and of choices, and go back to what I think has been one of the most important security developments of the last 20 years, and that has been the orientation of Kazakhstan in terms of values, not just in terms of interests, not just in terms of elite politics, not just in terms of the kinds of agreements that have been signed among countries. But as I've been traveling to Kazakhstan over the last 20 years, while I've never served there, I've had the opportunity to visit there very much. I've been very impressed with the orientation of the Kazakh people, particularly of younger Kazakh people, towards values of openness, towards values of transparency, towards a desire to be part of the rest of the world, and an awareness of the challenges they face in doing that, placed as they are geopolitically. The choices that Kazakhstan is going to have to make in the future about where it aligns itself, who it aligns with, how it balances the various interests that it has, and as I said, Kazakhstan has done a tremendous job of that so far, but I think it's going to get harder. But those choices that are made will be influenced by the orientation that Kazakhstan has on its values. Now you say, why is somebody who is introduced as being from the Department of Defense talking about values? Well, let me step back to Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, my main job over the last 4 years was helping to build the Afghan army. We've built a pretty good army in Afghanistan. Over the last 12 months, they've taken the lead in the fighting against the Taliban. U.S. and NATO forces do hardly any combat anymore. The Afghan forces have been successful. They've not lost any ground to the Taliban. In fact, they've gained some ground back. And they're poised, I think, to be a very effective security institution. However, in the months since I left the government, it's become even more clear to me that no matter how good a security institution you build, the key thing is governance. The key thing is the political will of the people, how it's exercised, because in the end, armies, police forces are not what makes a country. It's the governance of the country is what makes a country. Kazakhstan has been extraordinarily fortunate over the last 2 plus decades, in that the governance and leadership that Kazakhstan has moved it forward through those great challenges it has faced. But again, I think those challenges are going to be greater in the future with a China that is going to become more assertive in all of its neighborhood, not just in the East China Sea with an air defense identification zone, but in all its neighborhood. with a Russia that seems to be seeking in some ways to recreate part of the old Soviet Union, and a growing influence from India, which I think is one of the areas that is less apparent now, but become even more apparent in the next 5 to 10 years. Those are the kind of challenges that will test a country's leadership, test its ability to find its own way. I'm very hopeful of that, primarily because of, as I said, because of my exposure to the young people of Kazakhstan, who I think will meet that challenge. But it's also something where I think the United States has an important role to play, and I think the agenda and the commitment that was laid out by Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary Hoagland just now bodes well for that continuing partnership. But I think it'll be a challenge for all of us as we work with Kazakhstan as it faces its challenges. And thank you very much, and look forward to further discussion.
Fred Kemp has led the Atlantic Council in Washington since 2006. The Atlantic Council is certainly one of the most respected institutions in this city. And I think for this audience in particular, it holds importance because it sort of embodies the idea of the Western option. And so, Fred, I look forward to your talking about regional cooperation, but also I hope you'll say a word about the way Kazakhstan is seen in the world of the Atlantic Council and its constituents.
Thank you, Ambassador Collins. I think the fact that Senator Ayotte came here is a further testimony to the importance of Kazakhstan to the United States. Ambassador Umarov, Ambassador Hoagland, fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen. It's always an honor to follow people I respect so much, Ambassador Collins, Ambassador Umarov, Ambassador Hoagland, and David Sedney. Where David lined things up, I hope to pick up from that point where I talk about challenges as well as the praise. David said it's going to get harder, and it is going to get harder for Kazakhstan, but not just Kazakhstan, but for everybody. If you want to define the world we're in right now, it's an era of global competition. And because of that, the countries that learn how to compete best on the world stage will do best. And if you look at Kazakhstan's neighborhood, its geography, it's a challenging neighborhood. And it's a little bit harder to do better in that neighborhood than it is perhaps in our own neighborhood. It's a great pleasure and honor for me to be part of this conference and have an opportunity to talk about the opportunities that lie before Kazakhstan to position itself for this world that we see ahead. And of course, Central Asia as a whole, with Kazakhstan as a hub of European cooperation, prosperity, and peace. The Atlantic Council has a substantial track record of work on Kazakhstan and Central Asia. In connection with a year-long task force on the region led by our then chairman, Senator Chuck Hagel, now Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel, I had the honor to visit the region for talks with government and other leaders and key figures in Astana and Bishkek in June 2010, when we also engaged with Ambassador Hoagland, who was there at that time. Kyrgyzstan had just overthrown its president and endured bitter ethnic strife. Afghanistan was a big preoccupation and uncertainty, and Kazakhstan had just become the first post-Soviet state to serve as chairman in office of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. U.S. engagement in the region seemed to be in a muddle, and the Council's task force produced a set of reports and recommendations that focused on U.S. policy in Central Asia, not just as an adjunct of Afghanistan, though I agree what happens in Afghanistan in 2014 and in the decade beyond provides us an opportunity to work more closely with Kazakhstan. But we were looking not just as relationships with Kazakhstan and Central Asia as an outgrowth of what was going on in Afghanistan, but as a priority in and of itself. And Ambassador Collins, that's really the answer. We've seen Kazakhstan as what we at the Atlantic Council call a pivotal state. Ukraine, as David Sidney said, is a pivotal state. Turkey is a pivotal state. But I would argue that Kazakhstan and the Eurasian region more largely is pivotal and has outsized importance. And which way it goes and whether it's stable and whether it's prosperous and who it works with on the world stage will have consequences that go way beyond the region and are global. Since those visits, other senior council representatives have been to Astana, Almaty, and also Tashkent for talks with regional leaders. We've also hosted in Washington leaders from the region, including Kazakh Foreign Minister Idrisov, and the Kazakhs seem to always send their best and brightest to our city, Ambassador Umarov. And we've been working these issues and continue to work these issues. And we will continue to work these issues because of the pivotal nature of Kazakhstan, whose development and actions will shape politics, security, and economics in its region in a rapidly changing world of the 21st century. We see the world as being at an inflection point that is as important as 1815, 1919, 1945, 1989. If you do believe that, and if you see that the United States now has 18% of world GDP, as opposed to 50% of world GDP in 1945, you know the U.S. has to work together with key strategic partners and actors around the world to ensure the right sort of future, and Kazakhstan is going to be crucial in this historic inflection point. To be more precise, the extent to which Kazakhstan succeeds as a strong, secure, prosperous, dynamic, open society will have influence on the success and failure of the countries around it. And that success will have failure, will have influence beyond. Will Kazakhstan be part of a Russian sphere of influence? Will it be part of a Chinese sphere of influence? Will it be part of its own sphere of influence? Will Eurasia be an independent actor that makes its own decisions in its own interests? These are huge questions. Taken as a whole, and outside the oil and gas sector, the economies of Central Asia are not sufficiently diversified. They do not trade enough with each other or the rest of the world. Despite these and other challenges of governance, participatory societies, etc., Kazakhstan is succeeding in enormously important ways and has a chance to be the hub for the region and a very important place for the rest of the world if it can continue on a positive internal and external path. It has an ethnically mixed population, but has largely avoided interethnic strife. It has developed a vibrant hydrocarbon industry connected both east to markets in Asia and west via Russia and the Black Sea to international markets elsewhere. This industry has in turn furnished critical resources for creating a new Kazakhstan through the construction of new infrastructure, work to address environmental and other legacies of the Soviet past, and the establishment of new institutions of higher education that will be essential for the country in the decades to come. Among the last have been critically important leadership training initiatives, including the Bolshak and other scholarship programs. One of my first decisions upon joining the Atlantic Council was to hire a young Kazakhstani citizen graduate of one of these exchanges to help lead the Council's early redevelopment efforts, where she did a terrific job and was a great ambassador for your country and continues to be one. Kazakhstan has built serious security relationships, as David Sedney has said, going all the way back to President Nazarbayev's decision to give up inherited Soviet nuclear weapons, and reflected now in structures of which the country is part: OSCE, NATO's Partnership for Peace, the Collective Security Treaty, and the Shanghai Cooperation Organizations, among others. Over the next decade, Kazakhstan has an outstanding opportunity as well to lead in the economic rebirth of Central Asia that can help make it a hub, fulcrum, and exporter of security and prosperity and stability throughout Eurasia. And of course, there'll be a great deal of focus on that in Afghanistan post-2014. However, to achieve the role it wants for itself, Kazakhstan has to tackle some issues. And this is well known in Kazakhstan. If you read in this very interesting report published by our Atlantic Council Board Director, Alan Spence, who's CEO of Newsdesk, Foreign Minister Idrisov himself talks about the need to reduce, and this is in the 2050 strategy, the need to reduce dependence on energy and move more toward high tech. An economic agenda that has to reduce state regulation and give more room for private enterprise. These are absolutely crucial steps that need to be taken in order to be the hub that Kazakhstan wishes to be. Of course, it should urgently complete the negotiations necessary to join the WTO, and that will confer important good housekeeping seal of approval on the country and its trade and economic policies. But beyond that, it has to more fully modernize the wording and implementation and practice of its commercial code in ways that will serve to unlock the innate trader and producer capabilities of Kazakhstani citizens. Kazakhstani authorities need to make more effective and predictable the country's regulatory, tax, and legal regimes, the rule of law that is so essential for a healthy functioning of a market economy. More space for private business, less space for the state bureaucracy to get in the way of private business. Kazakhstan needs also to catalyze a new spirit of regional cooperation. It is little exaggeration to say that Central Asian states trade with one another about as much as if they were on 5 separate continents. Ambassador Umarov, in this same excellent report on investment in Kazakhstan, talks about one has to go from the notion of being landlocked to land-linked. He says, quote, "The world is increasingly interconnected, and building bridges and strengthening ties with our neighbors and beyond will help us all to move forward to a more prosperous future." That's absolutely right, and it's not easy. The share of trade these 5 countries conduct with one another is the lowest of any comparable region in the world. Too much the norm are days or weeks to clear goods through customs or even closed borders, a plethora of regulatory and other non-tariff barriers to trade, and unfriendly investment policies. All of these things have to be taken on. The peoples of Central Asia will rise or sink as a region, and what they need is regionalism, more cooperation on practical policies and initiatives that will make the area act like the region it is. Steps that Kazakhstan has taken or encouraged to have been taken have been great, including, for example, recent agreements on cooperation with Uzbekistan and efforts to facilitate better ties between Uzbekistan and its neighbors, Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan. The U.S. government's new Silk Road Initiative has among its core objectives the idea of transforming Central Asia into a bridge or a roundabout, perhaps is even a better term to use Ashraf Ghani's expression, that connects the Far East, South Asia, Europe, and Central Asia itself via land trading routes that may be cheaper, faster, and more secure than those on the high seas, and that offer the promise of development, jobs, and prosperity in Eurasia's heart as well. Ambassador Hoagland spoke of this. And we at the Atlantic Council are determined to do our part in promoting this notion. Kazakhstan's leadership in developing trans and pan-Eurasian trade and economic development will be an important part of the progress the region makes over the coming decades. The Asian Development Bank, European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, other multilateral organizations, and the region's countries individually have made great strides in designing and building a new physical transit and trade architecture, new pipelines, electric lines, roads, railroads, and other critical infrastructure. No less important will be the policy infrastructure and architecture to make sure the new physical bits work effectively. New railroads and highways will not be worth the cost if the goods shipped on them sit at border crossings. The Silk Wind multimodal approach to trade transit, and business facilitation, of which Kazakhstan is part along with Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Turkey, is exactly the kind of thing that is needed to convert transit and trade opportunities into shipments and the economic development that will go with it. Another contributor, of course, can be the accession of all the Central Asian states into the WTO. And here, too, Kazakhstan's leadership in completing its own work will encourage or perhaps spur Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and Azerbaijan, the last three regional holdouts, to make the plunge to the WTO. We have the idea that Kazakhstan and Central Asia can make themselves important east-west and north-south connectors of the Eurasian landmass, and we'll work to support that idea. They can do so through wise policy. Kazakhstan is already playing a leading role. It should continue its efforts, and the United States and other friendly countries of the transatlantic community, and one shouldn't forget that half of the investment into Kazakhstan comes from the European Union. We will work together as the transatlantic community to support this. So thank you very much for your attention, and thank you for the invitation to talk.
Our last two panel speakers are going to be basically focused on economics. Ariel Cohen is a senior research fellow at the Heritage Foundation. He has long experience writing and doing research on Russia, Eurasia, Central, and East Europe, and is one of the really well-known names here in Washington when it comes to expertise on the region. So Ariel, I gather you're going to talk to us about energy and green policy.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Collins, Excellencies, Ambassador Umarov, and thank you for the kind invitation and the organization from the Embassy of Kazakhstan and the Turquoise Council. The security and the geopolitics is probably the heart and the body of the relationship, but the blood that's circulating in the economic relationship between the United States and Kazakhstan is energy. And it started in the early 90s when the United States energy companies were pioneers in developing Chengiz and other oil fields. The United States companies and other super majors and majors played a key role in making Kazakhstan what it is today and what it is becoming, a first-rate energy power in Eurasia. And this is not just onshore oil, this is not just old oil, this is also offshore oil and a lot of accompanying gas. I will not bore you with the numbers of how much each field produces and where it's going. Suffices to say that Kazakhstan is home to some of the largest oil finds of the 20th century, like Tengiz, like Kashagan, and Karachaganak. Today, Kazakhstan is producing 1.6 million barrels a day in comparison with only 500,000, more than 3 times of the peak of the Soviet production. This is what freedom and international connections did to Kazakhstan, and what is capable of doing to other countries in the region if they protect their freedom and their sovereignty. In terms of a relationship in the energy sector, the United States and Kazakhstan have the U.S.-Kazakhstan Energy Partnership. This year, 2013, was the 10th meeting of the partnership, capably presided over by Minister Suat Minabayev, Minister of Energy of Kazakhstan, and our Deputy Secretary of Energy, Daniel Poneman. In the partnership, we're covering not just oil and gas, not just technology in the hydrocarbon sector, but also a lot of nuclear issues are on the table. You remember, of course, that nuclear disarmament and decontamination were the key, were at the heart of Kazakhstan's far-sighted nuclear policy in the 1990s, when Kazakhstan voluntarily disarmed and was shutting down and dealing with the consequences of horrible radioactive contamination left after the Soviet era. We also are addressing nuclear security, nuclear power, hydrocarbon resources, renewable energy, and energy efficiency, and electric power. As a result, we have a joint action plan that outlines cooperation in all these areas, and this benefits American businesses and Kazakhstan's businesses and Kazakhstan energy development. The United States also contributes to the second line of defense program, which is a program to stop nuclear proliferation and enhance international safeguards. We have a nuclear security training center that will be built there, and a number of nuclear reactors are going to be modernized. There will be research reactors that will be switched from highly enriched uranium fuel to low enriched uranium, which is, of course, a security measure. And beyond all that, I think the initiatives of President Nazarbayev calling for Iran to stop its nuclear program and not having military applications of that nuclear program are indeed a great contribution to safety and security of our world. In addition, the United States is promoting global methane initiative to curb methane emissions. This is an important measure to curb greenhouse gases, and we're also contributing to cleaner burning of coal and beginning efforts to support the development of shale gas, in which, of course, the United States is the leader, and coal bed methane. To share a little bit of our own research, recently we completed a report that focuses on energy development for Kazakhstan, looking over the horizon, looking to 2025, 2030. And Kazakhstan, of course, now that is a higher medium income, in the higher band of medium income countries, and is developing towards higher income and higher tech in its economy, is dealing with the fact that the majority of its energy for industry, energy for the national economy, is generated by 20th century coal-burning technologies. And in an effort to reduce the emissions, Kazakhstan is looking at greener technologies, more sustainable technologies, be it in clean coal, in natural gas, in hydro, and in renewables such as wind and solar. The main take-home from this research is that while it is important for Kazakhstan to start on the learning curve, and the Kazakh government is investing billions of dollars in acquiring new technologies in solar, in wind, and in other areas, it is also important not to go overboard. The European experience is that a country like Spain, for example, that was spending billions of dollars subsidizing solar, got to a point where they had to abruptly stop solar programs, and it hurt the renewable sector. A country like Germany is making its own calculus that is not only driven by economics, it's driven by German politics, which is extremely averse to nuclear, but instead the burning of coal in German energy generation is increasing with the emissions that are typical for coal. So that there's a big question mark. Are you here trying to cut your nose to spite your face? In the case of Kazakhstan, we believe that a gradual acquisition of technologies, training of personnel, adjustment of the regulatory framework will, of course, help in this transition to more clean and sustainable energy. However, this all has to be done through coordination, through research that is managed carefully by state companies, by the government, and by the private sector. With that, of course, Kazakhstan is and will be a pioneer in Eurasia in transition to sustainable energy. It will be able to either export coal or transition to cleaner burning coal, which is somewhere in the vicinity of 64% of the current power generation. It can move up the value chain from mining uranium to manufacturing uranium fuel for reactors. And it can also improve and make more efficient its gas network, connecting different parts of the country, parts that are consuming gas with the parts that are producing gas, improving the export of gas, or possibly moving towards gas to liquid technology that also increases the value of the gas, and of course going away from value destructive technologies such as flaring of natural gas. To conclude, the American companies and the Department of Energy and other parts of our government are in the energy dialogue with Kazakhstan, are in the energy partnership. We see great opportunities for our companies. Yes, it is true that in the 90s our companies were the leads in large-scale transactions, and now probably the Chinese companies are in the lead because China is a logical market next door to Kazakhstan, both for oil and eventually for gas or for transit of gas. Having said that, I think it is a great opportunity as the country is developing and as our partnership with Kazakhstan in the energy area is getting stronger. Thank you very much.
Finally, our last speaker, in a sense, is the one person I think who can speak to us about practical involvement in the economy. General Electric has been one of the earliest companies to be engaged in a wide range of economic activity in Kazakhstan, from rail transport to water purification, and in the energy sector as well as aviation. So, Sandy Merber, the floor is yours, and it's always tough to be the last speaker.
I actually have slides if they're teed up, but I can do without them if they're not. Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be the last speaker and to address this audience, and a real pleasure to have been invited to do that. I'm going to talk about GE's experience in Kazakhstan, and I think it's going to touch on some of the themes that have already been raised, particularly the theme of economic diversification, because GE's story in Kazakhstan is not only one of GE's diversification as our relationship has grown in the country, but also we're proud of the role that we're playing in helping Kazakhstan to diversify its economy from natural resources into manufacturing and higher technology products. Ambassador Umarov spoke earlier about the role of private companies in Kazakhstan's economic development in helping Kazakhstan industry become more efficient. And I hope that our involvement has been helpful in that respect as well. So it's actually not a bad thing to be the last speaker, because you get to pick up on the themes that have already been developed, and you have a roadmap prepared for you. If we could look at the second slide, this is information that I think is familiar to most people in this audience, but it's what we see when we look at Kazakhstan. What we see is we see a large territory equal to the size of the European Union, a population of 17 million, top 10 reserves in a number of oil and gas and a number of minerals, a major crossroads that's been discussed, and I'm going to talk a little bit, actually I'm going to talk quite a bit about GE's involvement in the rail transportation industry in Kazakhstan and the exciting prospects that there are for Kazakhstan becoming the land link between the East and West. We see a large and growing GDP and the prospects for additional GDP growth in the future. And what attracts us to this market is, as I just mentioned, the increasing production of natural resources, but also the stable political situation that we find, the tremendous support we feel as an investor in Kazakhstan from the government throughout. And I'm going to talk also a little bit more about the relationships we've been able to build as an infrastructure provider with the government of Kazakhstan, which of course is responsible for providing a world-class infrastructure that is going to be critical to the Project 2050 goal of becoming a most developed country by 2050. There's been a lot of discussion of the Bolshak program. We find an educated population throughout Kazakhstan. We've hired many Bolshak graduates, and we've actually employed many of them as interns while they're studying. Kazakhstan has also been mentioned as a base for expansion in the region. Kazakhstan has wonderful regional relationships with its neighbors in the CIS, and with the customs union among Kazakhstan, Belarus, and Russia provides an additional opportunity as a platform. It's important to see going forward that the customs union is implemented in a manner that's fair to all of the parties, but it has the potential to make Kazakhstan very attractive as an entry point into the region. And we also see new plans for construction and modernization projects. We see demand increasing for the technologies we're involved in. We see the government support for that and other strategic initiatives like the Expo 2017. But I think what's not on this chart, but which was mentioned particularly by Ambassador Umarov, and I think he said it well when he characterized Kazakhstan as a forward-looking country. And we see that not only in the plans for Project 2050, but also in the importance Kazakhstan places on becoming an ever better environment for business investment and business activity, characterized by their commitment to increasing their ranking in the World Bank Doing Business indicator. And I think that the dedication that they put behind that from President Nazarbayev all the way through the government in achieving that goal last year or the year before presages optimism for success of the Project 2050. The kind of resolve that was put behind that is, I think, indicative of the seriousness that Kazakhstan places in such programs. As I mentioned, GE is principally an infrastructure company. We're involved in air transportation and rail transportation, power generation, oil and gas development and energy production, nuclear industry, healthcare, water purification. All of these are important issues for any government, and particularly for a government forward-looking and looking towards the year 2050 and the development that's being anticipated. And so in that spirit, General Electric and the government of Kazakhstan have found a common partnership for looking forward together in developing the Kazakh economy and developing that infrastructure. We've formed a structure where twice yearly we meet at a very high level to discuss infrastructure plans and plans for economic development, how General Electric can participate, training and education programs that we can do with the government and with private industry, and to plan our activities together. And that's been very important, and I think is a good model for moving forward for the role of companies in improving the economic sector. And of course, we learn as much as we share in the relationship. This is just a short list of success stories. The title of this talk is a success story. And I think what makes it a success story is that it's a success for GE and it's a success for Kazakhstan. I think any economic success story has to be that way. In the oil and gas sector, we for many years have participated in all of the major oil and gas projects. We have a large installed base in of turbines and high-pressure gas compressors. In power and water, we have a large installed base of technology. And then in the rail transportation, and I'm going to talk particularly about that because this has been the foundation around which we've been able to build a strong and deepening relationship with Kazakhstan, beginning with modernizing the diesel locomotive fleet through modernization kits that were specially designed for Kazakhstan and the CIS region and the environments you find there. Continuing through the building of a locomotive plant, of which we're very proud, for assembly of the latest technology diesel electric locomotives in Kazakhstan, and leading to the export of locomotives from this facility to the region. So first, just a short glance at the GE's transportation business. Headquartered in Chicago, it's about a $5.6 billion a year business. We have an installed base of 17,000 locomotives, 10,000 under long-term service contracts, and we're involved in locomotives, diesel engines, services, applications for marine, signaling, and rail management, and in the mining industry. But the story of GE in Kazakhstan is really a unique story for us. And in preparing for this, I was speaking with some of our people in the transportation business, and the remark was that Kazakhstan is really the brightest spot in the world for GE transportation. Since 1997, and I've been happy to have been involved in this for all that time, we started, as I mentioned, with agreement to provide modernization kits for the existing fleet in Kazakhstan, some additional new locomotives as a beginning into that market, and service contracts for the locomotives. We found Kazakhstan to be such a good market and such a good partner that we in 2009, together with partners in Kazakhstan, opened a locomotive assembly plant that has the capability of, let's see what the number is, of assembling between about 100 to 150 units a year for use in Kazakhstan and for export. We're going to begin building passenger locomotives at that facility next year. Hopefully, we'll begin building shunter locomotives in that facility. And as I mentioned, if we can go to the next slide. As I mentioned, this facility has supported exports to Russia, to Estonia, Tajikistan, and Turkmenistan, and has the capability of being a very important export platform for the region. And what we build there is our most advanced locomotive. It's what we call the Evolution locomotive that adapts and we've adapted that technology to the local environment and local standards. I won't go into the sales pitch for the locomotive. If anyone's interested in buying one, you can see me afterwards. Be happy to do that. I have some contracts in my pocket. But let's go to the next slide. We're quite proud of the facility that we've established in Kazakhstan. The first locally assembled unit came out of the facility at the end of 2009. We've built 190 units since then, 70 in 2013. I've mentioned export units not only to Tajikistan, but also, as I mentioned, Russia, Estonia, and elsewhere. It's 45,000 square meters of facility. And you can go to the next slide because it has some additional pictures. And we're very proud. As you can see, it is an absolute state-of-the-art facility, and it's applying our latest technology. It employs about 700 people. And about 40% of the production parts are localized as of 2012. It's our goal to continue to localize. It's important to us, wherever we're doing business, to be involved with local supply chains. It makes good economic sense. And so to the extent economically feasible, we move to increase the localization of production as much as possible. And as I mentioned before, we'll begin producing passenger locomotives next year. We can move on. Another business that is very well established in Kazakhstan is our oil and gas business. We produce oil field equipment for all of the projects that have been previously mentioned. And given the success of our localization in the rail business, we're looking for opportunities to increase localization in oil and gas. And to that end, we've recently agreed to a technology transfer agreement with a local partner in Kazakhstan for the servicing of the installed base. It's critically important to activity and technology. It's a challenging environment. Oil production in the Caspian requires very high reinjection pressures, not to get too technical because I can't get too technical, but we're proud that in Kazakhstan we've set world records for this technology. And so we're transferring technology to local partners to have more and more of that work be done in country by Kazakh companies. And so through the confidence we've built in our experience with rail, we're moving out and looking at what our opportunities are, both in expanding the rail ventures, as Ambassador Hoagland mentioned, but also looking at the healthcare business, water business, and others. So the experience of GE in Kazakhstan has been a success story. And I'm happy to say that it's been a success story for us, and I'm even happier to say that I think by having been invited here to speak on the topic of a success story, I take heart that it's viewed by Kazakhstan as a success story for Kazakhstan as well. And so I very much appreciate the opportunities that we've had and the grace that has been shown to us, and for the opportunity to be with you. So thank you.
We have a very few minutes for participation from the audience. Questions, comments are welcome. If you want to ask a particular question of one of the panelists, please let me know who it is. And we have about 5-7 minutes to do that, and then there will be a break before the next panel. So if there are questions, comments? Do we have a microphone, or how are we doing this?
Looks like the mic is on.
Oh, it's on. Okay.
Two important points. One, global warming mightily benefits Kazakhstan. Secondarily, Kazakhstan joins Turkey, Indonesia as a beacon of moderate Islam, eminently exportable moderate Islam. But the autocratic nature of the regime puts a brake on every aspect of the U.S.-Kazakh relationship. And I'm wondering if in a post-Nazarbayev world, Will it be plus ça change, plus la même chose? Or can we look forward to the kind of sea change we saw in a post-Chang Taiwan, a post-Park Korea, a post-Lee Kuan Yew Singapore, or a post-Franco Spain? This is really the elephant in the room. It's the elephant in this room.
Let me give Dick the chance to answer, and then David. Or you can decide.
Excuse me, Jim, I was still talking with one of my colleagues.
Okay.
Obviously, that's an important question. In the State Department right now, as we think future policy, as we look what can be accomplished in the next several years, as we look for strong partners, as we continue our commitment in the region, one thing that has to be taken into account, of course, is not only inside the Beltway here, but in other countries of the world. The question that you pose circumscribes some of the possibilities that are there right now. And so it would be our commitment to work in all areas, not excluding absolutely the human dimension, not excluding religious freedom, human rights, and all of the other issues that are still out there. But I would also add that in my own personal opinion, based on experience, and please understand that I'm not speaking for the State Department at this moment, but in my own personal experience of having lived in and worked in 4 of the countries of the Central Asian region, and having been very closely involved with the 5th, I would suggest that Kazakhstan is on the road to working on those problems and solving those issues that you have raised. That's why it's important for us to stay involved as good, strong partners working together, because incrementally, we do solve those problems.
David?
I'll just, first of all, second everything that Dick said. I agree that it's a major issue, but I would stress that it's a major issue for the people of Kazakhstan. And those of us who are outside of Kazakhstan, we can observe. I think we should also be cautious about providing prescriptions or trying to push in a certain direction. But I did do a little bit of that in my own in my remarks with my stress on openness and transparency. And as I said, Kazakh young people that I've met who have been the benefit, who had the benefit of the great educational opportunities that the current government has, I think, made a tremendously important investment in those educational opportunities, both in Kazakhstan and outside of Kazakhstan. I think the capability there for a transition to a more open, transparent society that reflects the values that these young people put forward is very much there. But again, I want to stress it really has to be the people of Kazakhstan who make these choices. And I think one of the things that we in the United States need to be aware of as we have given prescriptions to other countries, whether it was in the early 90s in Russia or other former countries of the Soviet Union, the record has been at best very mixed of how outside pressure, influence, an outward-in kind of model for the future has worked. But I agree with you, it's important, and it's important for analysts and those of us who are looking at the future of Central Asia and Kazakhstan to be very aware of.
One more question. No? Wait a minute. Oh, yeah. Please, in the back.
My name is Odile. I'm with the Voice of America. My question is for Ambassador Hoagland. Last month, during her swearing-in ceremony, Nisha Biswal talked about the increase the Bureau is getting in terms of money. What's the increase, the amount, and what portion of it will be, or how much will be spent for the Silk Road strategy if the initiative is still valid?
repeat one more time. Increase in money for what?
Yes, how much is the Bureau getting? What's the increase for the Central Asian, South and Central Asian affairs?
You know, that's a hard question to answer, and I'm not trying to be cagey about it, but the way the budget process works, we're still in the pass-back and reclama stage right now. We're thinking, in general, monies come into a regional bureau in the State Department as a lump for the whole region. We're trying, with Assistant Secretary Biswal, we're trying to be creative and think, how can we focus on specific issues that are of importance in our long-term bilateral relationships? So I'm not trying to fudge and not answer, but I don't have an answer for you. So I'm sorry for that.
All right, I think with that, our time is up. I want to thank this panel. It's been a very good set of discussions. We've covered a lot of ground. And most importantly, I think we laid the base for the next panel. So I want to thank you all and thank the audience for being with us and for participating.